Hey there, welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops, and welcome to part 3 in my series on Lake Superior, the little expedition I did up on Lake Superior about a month ago now. And what I'm going to do today is, I think where I last saw you, we were making up, I was actually working on these images on the computer, and I was showing you how I process the image and make them into what I think I want them to become and what I saw in my mind's eye. So what I did is I took that image that we worked on in the last video, if you want to find that, that's up here right now. And I decided to make it into a salted paper print. I thought that might be an interesting thing to do because, considering that a lot of my videos on the salted paper printing process have become fairly popular. So I thought you might like to do this with me today. So what I did is I went ahead and I made a negative. And I made the negative, as you can see here, I made the negative in the salted printing curve that I have. Now, I won't explain the curves to you right now because I've got a whole series on that. So you can just look up on my channel the series on making digital negatives and you'll see what that's all about. Now what I did is I made a curve specifically for the salted paper printing process. So that just involved testing some test strips and going through and making sure that they read correctly, the very same that I do with other processes. And I got a really nice curve that I was able to plug in and print this negative. So as you can see, I've also taken the liberty to mask the negative with ruby lith. Now, I like to do that with a lot of my negatives because I like to get a nice clean edge on my photographs. And I not only mask the negative, but I also mask the print when I'm coating it. But not this part that I'm going to show you right now. First, I have to coat the paper with sensitizer, and that's the first part of the salted paper printing process. Now, I've got another video on that that you've probably seen, and if you haven't, again, check up here. I'll have some links to these videos. And in that video, I give just kind of a basic idea of what the salted paper printing process is. And in this one, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on that. Now, I'm also going to, in doing that, I'm going to show you a little bit one of my tricks on mixing a little bit of food dye in with my silver nitrate when I coat my paper. And I do that so that I can see where I have coated it. Because I don't like to coat the whole piece of paper. As I said before, I like to mask off the paper. And what happens though is that once I've sensitized it with my sensitizer, and then I have to dry that, and then I have to go back to the second part, which is putting on the 12% silver nitrate solution. And it's also clear, so when it dries, I can't tell where it is, so that I can lay my negative where it's supposed to be. So what happens is by using a little bit of food dye or just common food coloring, I can give some color to the area where the silver nitrate goes, and it doesn't impede the printing process at all. And as soon as you go through the processing of it, which is just in water and salt water, it washes out the food dye, and it's inconsequential then. So it's a really handy thing to do, and I'll show you here how I do that. But again, first what I'm going to do is just coat the paper with sensitizer. I've got an 11 or a 10 by 11 sheet here of Hahnemühle Platinum Rag, and which is pretty much my go-to paper now for almost all things in my alternative printing. It's a really great paper, and it works. It's, you know, acidified so that it works really well with platinum and palladium, and it also handles cyanotype. It handles Van Dyke Brown. It handles basically any process that you want to throw at it, and it has both sides are good to use. But what I'm going to do now is coat this with the sensitizer. Excuse me. Now the sensitizer I have here in a Bostic & Sullivan bottle. Now you can buy a kit through Bostic & Sullivan that's very inexpensive. And I had done that in the past, but what I do now is I just mix up my own. Now there's ammonium chloride in here, there's some gelatin in here, just distilled water. And I use a formula that basically I got from Christina Z. Anderson. If you want to get her book, I've got a link in the description of things below, and you can get a copy of her book. There's a bunch of different formulas that you can use, a bunch of different toners and things, different papers, all kinds of things that are in that book. It's a really wonderful book to have. Anyway, So I'm going to take my sensitizer here, and I'm going to just put out, let's move my other camera here so that you can see what's going on. And I'm just going to put 4 like quarter-size drops of the sensitizer on the paper here up near the corners. And I don't really have to worry about amounts of this because it's, you know, I just want to coat the paper very nice. I want to coat the paper well. So I can't really use too much of it because I'd brush off the edges anyway. So I just like to use a liberal amount. The brush that I use is a Richardson brush. It's also the brush that I use for platinum and palladium printing. I have pre-wet this brush and dabbed it out on a piece of paper towel a little bit just to kind of saturate the brush so that my solution doesn't get soaked up into the brush and it more goes out onto the paper. So what I'm going to do is just brush it in. And like I say, I'm real liberal with it going in. You know, I mean, there's really no reason to be careful at this point. I just want to get the paper covered. Now, as I get the paper covered, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to be a little bit more fine and a little more finesse in my brush work when I'm putting it on here. Now, again, I cover the whole piece of paper. I won't cover the whole paper when I use the silver nitrate. I want to mask that off, as I said before. But for this, I like to cover the whole sheet. There's no harm in doing so. So as I get to the end here, I just want to brush nice and evenly, just kind of with the weight of the brush. And that gives me a good coating. Now, I'm just going to let that set and kind of level there. And then I'm going to go wash and rinse the brush. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to hang this paper up to dry. And then I'll come back to you once it's dry and we'll go through the second step of this, which will be masking it off and then coating it with the silver nitrate solution, all right? So stick with me. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so the coated paper is now dry and I am going to now mask this off. And the way that I do this, I've shown this before, but I'll just give you a kind of a quick overview of this right now. Is I'll put the paper, now this is my coated side now, I have to be sure that I remember that. And what I'm going to do here is set the paper up on top of the negative until it's aligned the way that I want it. And then I'm going to take a pencil and just make a little corner mark at each corner of the edge of the negative. And once I've got that done, I'll move the negative out of the way, put it off to the side safely, and turn off my light. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this tape. I've got a low-tack artist tape that I use. And what I'll do is I pick off a piece of tape and then I bend over the edge so that I can pick it off later. And then I will drag it out and just a little bit outside of each one of the dots, because what I want to do is actually coat a little larger area than what my negative will cover, just so that I'm not getting up against the edge of the negative. And then I go and I do it the same again. And I continue this all the way around. Just a little bit outside of the dots. Now, this tape, you have to be very careful when you're pulling it off, because you don't want to lift any of the sizing that's on the paper. And that sometimes will happen with other types of tapes. So with this stuff, I just kind of run my finger along it, and then I put it down, and I don't, you know, I'll just run a hand across it lightly like that. I won't rub it in. And it seals quite nicely. You don't get a lot of seepage on the edges, so you get a nice clean edge when you do your coatings this way. Okay, so here's the final piece of tape here. So I have that set up, as you can see. But now, this area I want to cover as well. And the way that I do that is I have strips that I've cut out of 8.5 by 11 just computer paper. And I take those and I'll put one on the edge, cover like that, and then I use a bit of Scotch removable tape. And this is the stuff that I use. It's the removable, comes in a blue box. And that works really good for this part of the process. So, and I continue this on around. And what I'm doing is I'm protecting the unmasked area from any spillage or anything like that when I'm doing my coating. So, 2 more of these to do. And as you can see, I've got everything covered now. So I'll set that off to the side, and I'm going to get ready for the next step here, so stick with me, all right? So back to this. Now comes the coating part here, and I've got a bottle of 12% silver nitrate that I'm going to use here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this into a shot glass. I'm going to use like 2, let's see, I'm going to use like 2 droppers full, knowing that I'll probably have a little bit too much in there. But the reason I'm mixing this in a shot glass and not just putting it right on the paper is because this is the step where I want to use a little bit of food coloring. Now, I'm going to take off and put just 1 drop of the food coloring in here. And as you can see, it turned kind of green on me there. But not to worry, because that is not going to show up in the final print. Basically, this is giving me a dye trace that I can use in my masked area so I know where the silver nitrate is coated so that I can then put the negative in the correct place. So I'm going to set that off to the side, and right now I'm going to go wet my brush again. I've saturated the brush, and then I'm just going to dab it on a piece of paper towel like that to take the excess off the surface. And then I'm going to put this out onto my paper here. And then I'm going to start brushing it in. Now I'm going to be very careful when I'm brushing not to splatter it all over the place. I don't want to be messy in this particular part of the process because silver nitrate gets everywhere and it will turn things black pretty much forever. So I'm being very careful here, putting it on. Already I have a pretty good coating, and as you can see I still have a lot of extra here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab a little bit of it off here onto my piece of paper towel. There we go. And now, much like palladium coating, I want to get a nice even coat on here. And there I am. So I'm going to leave that way. I'm going to take the brush and my shot glass and rinse it out. I'm going to let this level out a bit, and then I'm going to come back and take off the masking here. And then we're going to let this dry until it's ready to expose. Got the brush washed, shot glass is washed. I'm very careful not to drop any water on the surface now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and remove this mask carefully. First I take off the paper, and then I'll very carefully peel off the tape in the order of which I put it on. Now, if you watch on this camera here, you'll see that I'm very careful in taking this off, and I peel it off at a right angle because I don't want to be peeling up any of the sizing that's on the paper already. So there's one good side. Take off the next one. There you go. Being very careful not to remove any of the paper surface. There we go, perfect. I didn't tear anything off. And as you can see, I've got a really nice clean edge here. So I'm gonna set this off to dry now. Keep it in a dim area. You don't want any sunlight hitting this. And then I'll come back here and we're gonna make the print, all right? So stick with me. My paper's dry now. The silver nitrate coating is dry. And you definitely don't want to be touching the surface of this now, especially in the area where you are going to be making the image, because the oils from your fingers or scuffing can all add to problems. So what I want to do now is connect the negative with this. And so what I do to do that is I take it over here to the light table. I'll grab my negative. Now I put it on the light table so that I can see through and I can see where the negative is covering the green dye traced area. And that way, as you can see, I can make sure that my image is not clipped off in the area that's not coated. So I'll put that down there. I can take a piece of this removable tape, put it on there now, and then I'm ready to go. I can take it over to the print frame and we'll make our exposure now. So come on, let's go. Okay, got my print frame here. I'll get the back off. And then I'm just going to take this, put it face down inside of the print frame. I'm going to secure the back on here. Now, when I set this curve up, I found out that my maximum black on this printer, on this plate burner, which is really fast, is actually 21 minutes for my maximum black. So this is going to be a long exposure here. I'm going to go 21 minutes, and I may go another 21 after that to give it an extra stop of. The thing about the salt printing process is it's more of a self-masking process. So after a certain point, the dark areas won't get any darker, but the highlighted areas will come down a little bit, and I want to see where that is. I'm not really sure it's going to be right at 21 minutes for me. So the other thing about this is it's a printing out process. Now with the printing out process, I'm going to be able to open up the back on one side and look at it as it's printing, and I'll be able to see it developing as it's happening. So it's a way that you can see it as it's happening. Now, we won't actually be developing this, it's developing itself. Afterward, we're going to have to be soaking it and processing it in salt water and then sodium thiosulfate, but not before we put it into a gold toner as well, but we'll get to that soon. So right now I'm going to set my timer here at, we're going to go up to 21 minutes. Okay, so we're there at 21 minutes, and now it's time to put it in the burner. Everything looks good. Want to make sure there's nothing in there. It's nice and clean. And we will start the timer. There we go. So I'll come back to you in 21 minutes. Oh, actually, not 21 minutes. I'll come back to you in a little while here, and we're going to actually take a look at this partway through the exposure, and I'll show you what I mean by the printing out process. You'll see the image actually developing as it's going along. All right, so stick with me. So now I've gotten about halfway through my exposure here. I'm going to pause it and show you what I mean by the printing out process. Now, if you look down here on this camera, you can see I can peel back just half of the negative and you'll see the image developing there. It's pretty cool, isn't it? And now you'll see that it's kind of bluish green because that's my dye trace in there, but when we process it out in salt water, it's going to wash that away. But you can see I'm really getting a nice image in there. So 21 minutes might be enough for me, but let's put it back in there. We'll go the final exposure here, and then I'll make a determination at that point, all right? All right, now it'll continue out. I've got another 11 minutes to go there. And when it's done, I'll have another look at it with you. And we'll decide if we'll go on to processing it at that point, or if we'll go another 21 minutes. So stick with me. Okay, so we're done with our exposure now. And I decided to go with the full double exposure, 42 minutes, which gave me a little bit more of a denser exposure, but it won't hurt in the dark areas because, as I said, this process has a self-masking quality to it. So the darks will only get so dark while everything else catches up. So it's going to be a very meaty exposure, as I say, but let's have a look. So here we go. Wow, okay, so you can see there, it's pretty dense, but I think it's going to be fantastic. So let's take it on over to the sink here, and we will wash it out, all right? Now, as I mentioned before, this first bath here is about a 40% solution of salt. Now, I use non-iodized kosher salt, the coarse stuff. Don't use iodized salt when you're doing this process. So what I'm going to do is I've got a little bit extra mixed here, as well as what's in the tray, and I'm going to switch it out once after I've done this. So you can see up here on this camera, I believe, what's going on in the trays right now. This first tray is the salt. This second tray is my gold toning. If you want to see about the way I tone these, you can check out up here right now. I'll leave a link to that video. And then the third tray here is sodium thiosulfate, about a 30% solution. And that's to fix it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through the process here first. I'm going to run it through the salt water. Now you'll see when I do this, the print itself is going to lighten a little bit. And you're going to start to see it maybe turn a little bit red, that kind of thing. So that's pretty good for the first bath. You can see perhaps some of the dye has washed out. So that's not an issue anymore. Now I'm going to go with one more wash in salt water. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm clearing any silver nitrate that wasn't used in the exposure. It's a very rich image, and I'm pretty happy that I went with the extra stop. Now, of course, I'll have to try it once without that, of course, but for right now, it's looking good. Now, I'm just going to rinse it with a clear water right now. And then what I'm going to do before I go to fixing it, I'm going to shift it over into my toner here. And we're going to tone before going into the fix. Now, when you're using noble metal toners like gold toner, palladium toner, that kind of a thing, you want to fix after you've done the toning. Certain other things, like if you wanted to use selenium or tea or anything like that, you would use afterward. So let's take this now, and we're going to put it over here into our toning bath. Now again, look for the links for my video on toning salted paper prints. And again, this is a gold tone solution. So I am just going to let it sit in there for a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of agitation now and again. But what will happen in the toner is you'll start to see the print sort of shift color again. And in some of the areas where it's not as dense or dark, you might see it start shifting over to almost a purplish. And then you'll know that your tone is setting in. Now you'll see the way the print looks right now. When it's finally dried out, it's going to look a lot different. It'll have a completely different color to this than this. If I tone it long enough, it'll go almost to a purple. Now what happens is when I'm toning it, it's not only giving it some color and some depth, it's also working to preserve its longevity. Salted paper prints alone are somewhat fugitive. They're not going to disappear in a week or anything like that, but they will fade over time. So it's best to tone them with some sort of another metal toner, and in this case gold, and that will preserve the longevity of the print. And what it's actually doing is the gold molecules are encasing kind of the silver molecules. Let's tone this a little bit longer, and then I'm going to shift it over here to this final tray, the sodium thiosulfate fixer. Then I'm going to wash it and dry it, and then I'm going to come back to you and we'll wrap this up. I'll show you the finished product. We've got our dry print now, and I'm real happy with it. It's quite beautiful. Now, this is gold toned again, as I showed you as I was doing this. It would have a different coloration if I had just gone with straight salt, or if I had perhaps toned it a little bit longer. It's a bit of a moving target. You'd have to do a lot of experimentation on your own, but basically this is their print, and it's quite beautiful. I'm really glad that I went the extra stop. That helped a lot, and you know, other than some little aberrations in the print, I think it's quite beautiful. And I've actually got another one that I'm working on right now, just to see if I can make it better, if you know what I mean. But as far as this video goes, I'm going to call it quits on this one right now, and just call it a success. So I really appreciate you watching this series, as all of them. It's been really fun doing these, and you know, I'm really glad that the viewership is picking up. I can't thank you all enough for watching. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of them. Again, this was salted paper printing that I did here. I'm probably going to be doing the other print that I did on this journey, this Superior journey. I'm probably going to be doing it in a palladium, maybe even a gum over palladium. But yeah, really pleased with it. Thanks a lot for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, give me the old thumbs up. It really helps a lot. Subscribe. Continue to tell a friend. A lot of people have been spreading the word, which is really cool. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. So until next time, happy printing. Take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.